The glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. My father's voice still echoed through the kitchen air. "She won't fight back. She never does." Those words sliced deeper than any glass shard could. The scent of cinnamon and pine turned sharp, almost mocking. Warmth had no place in this home anymore. I crouched, gathering the pieces, pretending to clean. But really, I was collecting the fragments of myself. In that silence, something inside me broke and rebuilt. The girl who obeyed died quietly that night. My name is Evelyn Hart, and from that moment on, every illusion they built about me began to burn. They thought I'd bow my head like always. They thought wrong. The quiet ones don't stay quiet forever. When I was 8, Lydia had a birthday with a clown. Balloons, gifts, frosting roses stacked in 3 tiers. I had Domino's pizza, lukewarm soda, and a half-burned cake. Mom said money was tight, but Lydia's smile had its own budget. I told myself it didn't matter, that love came in other forms. But love in our house had a hierarchy, and I was at the bottom. At 12, I stopped asking for attention. At 16, I stopped expecting it. By 18, I learned invisibility could keep you safe. Graduation day proved the lesson. Rows of proud parents filled the gym, cheering their children's names. I stood with my diploma, scanning for familiar faces. There were none. My family was shopping for Lydia's dorm room instead. People said I was the quiet one, the steady one. But silence wasn't strength back then. It was survival. Years passed. While they celebrated Lydia's promotions, her wedding, her children, I built something they could neither give nor take. Stability. The condo became my proof. My first real space that smelled like peace. I decorated it with restraint. Cinnamon candles, pine garlands, quiet light. It was mine. Bought without their blessing or help. At night, I'd stand in the center of that stillness, listening to the hum of the city below. Freedom echoed, soft but lonely. It was beautiful, and it hurt. And that was the problem. Independence looked like rebellion to people who thrive on control. Sometimes I remembered my father's promise when I was little. "I'll always protect you, Evie." But protection turned into silence. His favorite disguise. Now that silence was mine. Only I used it differently. The night I heard his voice in the kitchen, it wasn't the first betrayal. It was the last straw. They'd taken my voice for years. Now they'd hear what silence sounds like. The morning after that dinner, the air felt heavier. Even sunlight seemed reluctant to touch the kitchen tiles. Lydia leaned against the counter, too casual to be innocent. "Wouldn't it be fun if we moved in here with you?" she said. Her tone was syrupy sweet, the kind that hides a knife underneath. "The kids would love it," she added, smiling. My parents exchanged a quick, satisfied glance. They had rehearsed this moment. I forced a weary smile, lowering my eyes like always. "Maybe it could work," I murmured softly, "if it helps everyone." Her face lit up, tears shimmering, victory disguised as love. They thought I had folded, just like every other time. But compliance was a mask I'd learned to wear well. Inside, something sharp began to stir. For years, I'd mistaken silence for peace. Now I realized it could also be preparation. That afternoon, I stopped by my mother's house, pretending to drop off a forgotten ornament from Christmas. The scent of her perfume and bleach filled the air, a familiar blend of cleanliness and control. She was fussing over cookies when I noticed the papers, a neat stack perfectly squared on the table's edge. Curiosity pulled me closer. Legal headers, fine print, and there my name written in a hand that wasn't mine. A signature, practiced but wrong. My breath caught. For a moment, the room tilted, the world narrowing to ink and deceit. I traced the letters with a trembling finger. They had really done it. Tried to transfer my condo. Every whispered conversation, every softened tone. It had all been rehearsal for this. When my father entered the room, he froze mid-step. Then came that polished smile, the one he used at funerals. "Ah, Evie," he said too lightly. "You weren't supposed to see that." He tucked the papers into a drawer, like guilt could be folded away. "It's just for family unity," he added, as if erasing my name was an act of love. My lips parted, but no words came out. Rage was too dense to fit through my throat. In that moment, I saw flashes of every silence before this. Birthdays ignored, promises broken, apologies that never came. All the times I'd swallowed anger now rushed back, burning like acid behind my ribs. I excused myself calmly, walked out the door, and didn't breathe until I reached my car. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the key. The skin of my palms split where my nails dug in. A small line of blood, bright and clean. That was the moment it crystallized. I wasn't their daughter. I was an obstacle. The car engine roared to life, and beneath the sound, a single thought pulsed steady and sure. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. But my way. I met Laura by accident, or maybe by design. A quiet Tuesday afternoon at a cafe near my office. She recognized me first. A distant acquaintance from years ago. Her voice carried the kind of exhaustion that only betrayal leaves behind. We talked briefly about families, about trust turned into a weapon. When I mentioned the condo, she set her cup down slowly. If you ever want out, she said, I'll buy it. Market price, no drama. The offer hung between us like a secret door. I smiled, the first real one in months. Freedom sometimes comes disguised as paperwork. That night, I ran the numbers, checked the clauses twice. Every digit was a memory, every line a quiet goodbye. By dawn, the plan was clear. Sell, transfer, disappear from their reach. Laura was efficient, calm where I was burning. Within a week, every document was signed in silence. I remember the pen trembling in my hand as I wrote my name. It wasn't just ink on paper. It was liberation carved in black. The funds moved into a trust under my control. No trace, no loopholes, no way back for them. Meanwhile, I played the part they expected. The obedient daughter, the yielding sister. I even helped Lydia pick curtain colors for her new home. She laughed, said I had such good taste. My mother teared up at my supposed generosity. Even my father looked proud again. They believed the performance, every sigh and lowered gaze. What they didn't realize was that I'd rewritten the script. Online, Lydia posted photos. The U-Haul, the boxes, the fake beginning of her triumph. New year, new home, her caption read. Moving into my sister's gorgeous condo downtown. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments praising our closeness. My parents shared it proudly, so grateful for family unity. I tapped the like button. It wasn't agreement, it was a countdown. A few days later, Lydia texted, "We're moving in this weekend," with a heart emoji. I stared at the message, feeling that familiar chill crawl up my spine. They were celebrating their own downfall, and I didn't have to lift a finger. All I needed was patience, and time always tells the truth. Every compliment they received only built the stage higher. The higher the stage, the harder the fall. At night, I'd sit by the window, wine in hand, watching city lights ripple against glass. The reflection staring back wasn't fragile anymore. It was focused, calculated, ready. Because this time, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. And they were already walking into a home that no longer belonged to me. The first Saturday of the new year arrived gray and cold. The kind of day that made breath visible. And consequences clearer. Right on schedule, a U-Haul truck pulled up to my building. Lydia hopped out first, scarf fluttering, joy rehearsed. Her husband barked orders, waving his arms like a general. Behind them, my parents shuffled proudly, directing the scene. Neighbors leaned against railings, pretending not to watch. Phones glowed in their hands. People always know when a story's about to break. Lydia's kids chased each other on the sidewalk. Boxes stacked higher than their heads. My father clutched the keys like proof of victory. He marched to the door, jabbed one into the lock. Nothing. He tried again, his knuckles whitening. "Did you change it already?" Lydia laughed, nervous. He didn't answer. He tried another key. Still nothing. My mother's smile faltered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone started recording. Then came the voice. Calm, clear, certain. "Maybe that's because it isn't yours anymore." Heads turned. Laura stood at the curb in a crimson coat. Coffee in one hand, folder in the other. The wind lifted her hair like punctuation. She stepped forward, heels clicking against the pavement. "This condo belongs to me now," she said evenly. "Evelyn sold it weeks ago. Here's the proof." She held up the papers. Stamped, notarized, undeniable. For a moment, silence ruled the street. Then came the unraveling. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Lydia's face drained to chalk. Her husband's voice cracked. "That's impossible!" But the papers didn't care about disbelief. They cared about ink and truth. Phones were raised higher. Gasps turned to murmurs, then to laughter. The proud family narrative fractured under daylight. My father tried to speak. "It's a misunderstanding." But his voice broke. Laura turned the key in the door. It opened smoothly. That simple click sounded louder than any scream. From my car at the corner, I watched through the mirror. The scene played out like theater. Each movement choreographed by their own arrogance. Lydia dropped a box. The sound echoed like an ending. My parents stood frozen, their reflections warped in the glass door. The humiliation was complete. Recorded. Shared. Immortalized. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just watched the door close behind Laura and felt the weight of 30 years lift from my chest. As I drove away, the city lights blurred into silver streaks. For the first time, I wasn't running from them. I was leaving them behind. And in that quiet distance between betrayal and peace, I realized revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it exhales and finally lets you breathe. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Calm, unshaken, free. For once, I recognized the woman staring back. And she was enough. In the weeks that followed, the world grew quiet again. No more late-night calls. No more apologies wrapped in excuses. Just silence, clean, absolute, earned. The headlines faded. Their faces disappeared from gossip threads and church whispers. And I learned something simple, almost sacred. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't need validation. It just needs space to exist. Every morning, I opened my windows to the ocean air. The sound of waves replaced the noise of their judgment. Coffee steamed in my hands as sunlight crawled across the floor. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to feel safe. Sometimes I think about that shattered wine glass, the moment it all began. Back then, I thought breaking was the end. Now I know it was the beginning. I've stopped replaying the betrayal in my mind. Stopped asking why they did it. Because the why doesn't change the who I've become. I am not the forgotten daughter anymore. I am the woman who refused to stay erased. The one who turned silence into armor and truth into freedom. Lydia can keep her stories. My parents can cling to their pride. I have my peace, my name, and the life they never thought I could build. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, remember this. Absence is also a kind of power. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to walk away and never look back. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living a life they can no longer touch. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading. And if this story found you tonight, remember, you're not alone. Before saying goodbye, if this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
I saw the truck before I saw them. A white U-Haul engine still running, parked half up on the sidewalk like someone in a hurry. The back was wide-open crib pieces stacked against boxes labeled nursery. Next to it, a familiar silver sedan, my parents' car. Then, the dented Honda that belonged to Chase, my sister's boyfriend. I didn't get out of mine. I just sat there, both hands still on the wheel. I could see my mother Carol pacing near the entrance of my building. She was on the phone with someone nodding too much. I cracked the window. Yes, the locksmith should be here any minute, she said. My daughter gave us permission, but she forgot to leave the key. My daughter. She wasn't talking about Kayla. I stepped out, slowly pulled my phone from my coat pocket and dialed 911 with steady fingers. The dispatcher asked if there was an emergency. I said yes. My name is Natalie Blake. I live at 1447 Elmsworth Avenue, and there are people trying to break into my apartment. I hadn't spoken to any of them in over 2 weeks. Inside the truck, I recognized a rocking chair I hadn't seen since Kayla moved in with Chase. A box of baby bottles. A folded-up playpen. I hadn't told anyone I'd be gone today. They'd just assumed. I stood there in the cold, watching my family unload my future without asking, and all I could think was, when did they decide my home was theirs to take? Because this wasn't just over a nursery. It had started long before, and back then I didn't even know what I was giving away. I bought my apartment 2 years ago. It's not big, not flashy, but every square foot has my name written into it because I earned it the long way. After college, I lived in a studio over a dry cleaner. The walls sweated in the summer and froze in the winter. I kept my groceries in a mini fridge and my clothes in bins under the bed. Rent was cheap, and that was the point. I worked at a marketing firm by day and picked up freelance copywriting at night. I skipped dinners out. I skipped holidays. I said no to girls' trips, birthdays, and weekends away. I ate canned soup and oatmeal. I sent my full-time paycheck to savings and lived off the scraps of my side gigs. When I hit my 7th year, I had enough for a down payment. I cried signing the mortgage papers, not because I was scared, but because it felt like the first time in my adult life that something finally belonged to me. It's a 2-bedroom in a quiet part of town. Nothing extravagant, just brick walls, north-facing windows, and a tiny balcony that gets good sun in spring. I turned the second room into a home office. I work hybrid, 3 days remote, 2 in office, and that room kept me sane through pandemic burnout and budget layoffs. My parents, Carol and Frank, came to see it once. Carol walked through it like she was taking inventory. Frank tapped the walls and said solid bones. Then they didn't say much. No congratulations. No real reaction. They told me later they thought I was rushing into ownership, but I didn't buy this place to prove anything. I bought it because I was tired of asking permission just to feel safe. Every inch of it was mine. The coffee ring on the nightstand. The dull scrape where my office chair wore the floor down. Even the smell pine cleaner and lavender smelled like me. That's what they tried to take. Not just a space, but the only thing in my life I didn't have to justify keeping. My sister Kayla and I grew up in the same house, but it never felt like we grew up in the same family. She was always the softer one, curly-haired, dramatic, and endlessly adored. I was quieter, sharper at the edges. I did my homework. I remembered to feed the dog. I packed my own lunch by 5th grade. Kayla forgot her shoes to school once, and they brought them to her wrapped in a towel like she was Cinderella. It wasn't blatant, not at first. Just small things that added up. Kayla got the bigger bedroom. I got her hand-me-down furniture. If we fought, I was told to be the bigger person. If she cried, I was told to give her what she wanted, just this once. I learned early that if I stayed useful, I'd stay out of trouble. By high school, the gap had widened. I was applying for scholarships while Kayla was sneaking out with boys who never stayed long. She dropped out of college her first semester, tried again a year later, and left before midterms. She's worked at a dozen places, coffee shops, boutiques, a yoga studio she didn't even like. None of it stuck. But she always landed on her feet. Our parents, especially Carol, had a way of framing it. She's just finding herself. She's creative. The world's not built for girls like her. And maybe that was true, but it didn't stop the pattern. Every time something fell apart, they caught her, and I kept working. When Kayla announced she was pregnant, no one blinked. She was 10 weeks along, barely showing, but Carol lit up like she'd won the lottery. Frank made a toast at dinner. To new beginnings, Chase sat beside her saying nothing, looking proud like he'd just solved a crossword puzzle. They were thrilled. Their first grandchild. Their second chance. Kayla beamed. I gave her a pair of newborn socks wrapped in tissue. She said cute and moved on. I smiled. I always smile. But inside, I felt something shift. Something small and sharp. Like the first pop of a seam when a fabric's been stretched too tight for too long. It happened on a Sunday. We were sitting at the dinner table in my parents' house. Kayla had been talking about morning sickness like it was a badge of honor. Chase, her boyfriend, said something vague about his band maybe getting a local gig. Carol brought out pie. Then, just as I reached for my coffee, Carol looked at me and said, "We need to talk about your apartment." I thought she meant the location, maybe asking about the neighborhood or whether there was noise at night. But no, she meant the apartment itself. It's a great space, she said. Perfect layout, plenty of light, and it's close to the park. Frank nodded like this was a business pitch. Babies need space. A nursery. You're just one person, Nat. It's not like you need 2 bedrooms. I blinked. I do need 2 bedrooms, I said. One's my office. Carol smiled like she didn't hear me. Kayla and Chase are really tight on space. That little 1 bedroom won't work once the baby comes. Chase kept eating. Kayla was quiet, rubbing her stomach like it meant something more than 10 weeks should. You want me to let them move in? I asked. They didn't blink. Frank shrugged. It's just logical. You can find something smaller. You'd even save on monthly costs. Not rented, I clarified. Give it family helps family, Carol said. And someday when you have kids, Kayla will help you. Kayla smiled soft and closed. She didn't offer a word of thanks, just looked at me like the outcome had already been decided. I set my coffee down. No, not loud, not angry, just solid. That's when Carol's eyes watered. I just thought, with everything your sister's going through, Frank added, it's not about the property. It's about people. Then Kayla spoke her first words all evening. Some people just aren't meant to be aunts. I stood up and walked out. The texts started that night. Articles about family values, infographics about single occupancy versus family living. A spreadsheet no joke from Frank explaining optimal square footage by head count. Then the phone calls. From Carol. From Diane, my aunt. From cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Each message carried the same undercurrent. I was being selfish. I was making a pregnant woman homeless. I was letting the family down. And no one, not a single one, asked why I said no. The thing about my family is they don't scream. They nudge. They imply. They layer guilt so gently it feels like love. Over the next week, I became a problem to solve. Carol sent me daily texts, quotes about sisterhood videos of babies giggling a photo of Kayla's bump that frankly looked like bloating. "She's glowing," she wrote. "This baby needs roots." Frank emailed me a cost breakdown. It showed how much I could save if I moved into a studio across town. He color-coded it, labeled one cell emotional ROI. Kayla posted on Facebook, "Some people just don't understand it takes a village. Grateful for those who do." I didn't reply, but Diane did. So did 3 cousins. The comments turned into a chain of thinly veiled digs at me. Kids show you who's really generous. Some folks forget who held them through the flu at age 5. I started dreading my phone. Every ding felt like a warning shot. I tried to explain that Kayla wasn't homeless, that she lived with her boyfriend in a functioning apartment, that I worked from home, that my mortgage wasn't something I could just break. No one heard it. Or maybe they did, but they'd already written the story in their heads, and in that version, I was the villain. What cut deepest wasn't the pressure. It was the assumption that I could be sacrificed without asking. They didn't offer to let Kayla stay with them. They didn't suggest a loan or help finding a bigger rental. It was always my apartment, my space, my life that needed to move out of the way. Because I always figured it out. I always said yes. I was the dependable one, the strong one, the one who made things work while Kayla unraveled. And for the first time in my life, I began to wonder, was being dependable just another way of being disposable? I brought all of it, every screenshot, every voicemail to therapy. My therapist looked at me and said, "You're allowed to want a door that only opens from the inside." That line sat in my chest for days. Because that's all I ever wanted, really. A space that didn't come with conditions. A life that didn't require permission. I thought maybe if we talked in person it would help. So I invited everyone, Carol, Frank, Kayla, and Chase, over to my apartment for lunch that Saturday. I wanted it to be calm. Neutral territory. I even made pasta salad from my mother's recipe, thinking it might soften things. They showed up 45 minutes early. I was still chopping basil when I heard my front door unlock. My mother still had a spare key from when I first moved in. I never thought to take it back. That would change. Carol walked in like she'd never left. Frank followed holding a laptop bag. Then Kayla rubbing her belly again. Then Chase. Then surprise Aunt Diane and her husband Michael. I hadn't invited them. I asked what they were doing here, and Carol said we thought it would help to have family present, just to keep things constructive. Chase dropped onto my couch and picked up my PS5 controller like it belonged to him. Kayla started walking through the apartment slowly like a realtor surveying a new listing. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Frank opened his laptop at the dining table. I put together a short presentation, just some thoughts on space utilization. You'll find the logic pretty sound. Carol began rearranging my spice rack. I told everyone to sit down, but Diane beat me to it. "Natalie, we're here because we love you, and because family means sometimes doing things that aren't easy." Then came the speeches. Frank spoke about sacrifice, Diane about how her generation understood duty. Kayla talked about her morning sickness. Chase mentioned that his band might need a garage for practice. My building doesn't have a garage. I waited, I listened, and when it was my turn, I spoke softly. I said I understood their concerns. I wasn't heartless. I loved my sister. But this apartment was mine, not a community resource. I offered to help Kayla look for a new place. I even said I'd contribute toward a deposit up to $1,000. Kayla stood up. "I just need to see something," she said, and walked straight into my bedroom. I followed. She was in my closet with her phone flashlight out, scanning the walls. "This would be perfect for the nursery," she said. "The closet's big enough for a changing table." "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just planning ahead." Mom said you'd come around. Back in the office, Carol was measuring the wall with a tape measure. That's when I knew. This wasn't a discussion. It never had been. The next morning, I changed the locks. It felt ridiculous, like overreacting, but I couldn't shake the image of my mother with a measuring tape in my office and Kayla in my closet, mapping out a future they never asked if I was part of. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a text from Kayla with a Pinterest board titled Natalie's Apartment Nursery Ideas. It had 47 pins, color swatches, crib options, a glider that cost more than my rent used to. The caption said, "So excited." The next morning, Carol called sobbing. She'd tried to let the designer in and had been humiliated when the locksmith turned her away. "Why are you making this harder than it needs to be?" she said. That same afternoon, the property manager from my building called. Someone he wouldn't say who, but we both knew had tried to add Kayla and Chase to my lease. When told only I could make that change, they asked about family transfer policies. There weren't any. The day after that, my security camera buzzed. 2 figures at my front door. One was Kayla. The other was a woman in business casual holding a clipboard. They tried multiple keys for nearly 10 minutes before giving up. That night, the family group chat lit up. Carol Natalie refused to let the nursery designer in. She wasted $200. Kayla. "Some aunt you turned out to be." Frank. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying." "Happy now." More comments followed, some from cousins I barely knew, some from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. All of them carried the same message I was the reason the family was falling apart. Friday morning, I woke to 14 missed calls. Kayla had created a public Facebook event, Help Kayla Move into Her New Home. The location, my address. 23 people had RSVP'd. I commented, "This is my apartment. Kayla does not live here and will not be moving in." The event was deleted within the hour. But not before screenshots were shared in the group chat with captions like "cruelty documented" and "imagine doing this to your own sister." I'd always known they underestimated me. Now, I was starting to understand by how much. 3 weeks later, things went quiet. Too quiet. No texts, no calls, no new group chat wars. I let myself believe for a moment that maybe they were backing down. They weren't. That Thursday, while I was at the office downtown, my actual office, not the one in my apartment, I got a text from my neighbor, Kevin. "Hey, everything okay? There's a moving truck outside. Thought you were going on vacation." My stomach dropped. I opened the app for my security cameras, and there it was clear as day. A U-Haul parked out front. Carol's car in the visitor spot, Kayla's Honda behind it. The back of the truck already open, filled with boxes labeled Baby Clothes Nursery and Books Chase. I left work without telling anyone. That 20-minute drive felt like hours. When I pulled up, I saw the crib from Kayla's old apartment. A stack of diaper boxes. The rocking chair again. My name was still on the door, but they were preparing to erase it. I ran to the building, heart pounding. The door was locked, thank God, but I heard voices inside the hallway. I pressed myself to the wall and listened. Carol was on the phone. Yes, the locksmith should be here any minute. My daughter meant to leave the key, but she forgot. I hit record on my phone and dialed 911. When the locksmith arrived, he looked confused. Frank handed him cash. Chase stood nearby, scrolling on his phone like this was all normal. I stepped out before they could touch the lock. "Don't," I said. "I'm the owner. These people do not have permission to enter." Carol's face lit up. Perfect timing. We were just, "No." "I've called the police. You're trespassing." Kayla started crying immediately. "How can you do this to your pregnant sister Chase without looking up, dude? The truck's only rented till 4. The locksmith stepped back. "I'm not getting involved in a family thing," he muttered and left just as the police pulled up. I showed the officers my ID, my lease, the cease and desist letter I'd sent, and the video footage. My parents tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. The officers didn't buy it. Then came the best part. One of the 2 men they'd brought, guys I didn't recognize, got nervous when the officers asked for ID. Turns out he had a warrant for unpaid child support. He was arrested on the spot. The other man admitted he was a tenant relocation specialist. In other words, someone they hired to move me out if I resisted. He left before anyone else could speak. The officers issued an official trespass warning. Any further attempts to enter this property, one of them said, will result in arrest. And still, Frank turned to me and said, "All this? For an apartment? No. All this because you thought I wouldn't fight back." The next morning, I checked my mailbox and found an envelope from my parents. Inside was a rental agreement dated 3 weeks prior, stating that I would be renting my apartment to Kayla for $500 a month. Already signed. By Kayla. With Carol and Frank listed as witnesses. There was a note, "Natalie, we thought this would be fair. You can stay with us until you find something suitable." Mom and Dad, I called my lawyer. We filed a cease and desist order against all 3 of them. I also filed for a restraining order and had the building formally trespass them. I changed my emergency contacts at work, removed them from my banking info and insurance beneficiaries. Then I blocked their numbers except through legal channels. The family chat exploded. Diane called me cruel. My cousin Mark texted, "Wow. Money really does change people." Uncle Glenn chimed in. "Your grandparents would be ashamed." Carol sent one final message, "I don't have a daughter anymore." Frank added, "All this for an apartment. Hope you enjoy living alone forever." Only one voice came quietly. "Rachel, my cousin messaged me privately. Saw the footage. They're out of their minds. Stand your ground." I posted the video to my own Facebook. No caption. Just the raw truth. In the days that followed, the harassment hit a different gear. Someone sent 5 food delivery orders I never made. My number showed up on a Craigslist post offering a free PS5. I started getting dozens of spam newsletters. 3 locksmiths called about a lockout request I hadn't submitted. Then came the lawsuit. I received a certified letter from their lawyer. My family was suing me for emotional distress, breach of verbal contract, unlawful eviction damages for moving truck rental and storage fees. They wanted $15,000 and the apartment. My lawyer laughed when he read it. Actually laughed. He filed a countersuit for attempted fraud, harassment, illegal entry, and defamation. Then discovery began. And that's when everything broke open. Texts between Kayla and Chase's mom, subpoenaed as part of the fraud charge, revealed their full plan. Move in. Let me keep paying the mortgage. Stop paying anything once the baby arrived. Claim I couldn't evict a family with a child. Eventually take over the apartment altogether. Kayla even wrote, "Once we're in a year, squatters' rights kick in." We looked it up. They didn't look it up well. That's not how it works in our state. The lawsuit didn't last long. 3 weeks after filing, it was tossed out. The judge called it baseless and a clear misuse of the court's time. Their own attorney, some poor man probably hoping for a quiet retirement, apologized to mine in the hallway. He'd advised against the case, but Carol and Frank were determined to be heard. They were. Just not the way they wanted. My countersuit moved forward. We had the texts, the security footage, the forged rental agreement. We had Chase's mom's statements and the timeline to match. Harassment was clear, the calls, the messages, the food deliveries, the locksmiths. Trespassing stuck, even if they didn't technically break in. Fraud. That was the crown jewel. Kayla got 18 months probation and 100 hours of community service. Carol and Frank received 12 months each for conspiracy. The court ordered them to pay $7,500 in damages and cover all legal fees. They were given 6 months to pay. I didn't post the verdict. I didn't message the group chat. I didn't call Rachel to celebrate. I just went home. Rachel told me later that Diane deleted all her Facebook posts. Uncle Glenn stopped returning Carol's calls. A few cousins quietly unfriended Kayla. I didn't care. I wasn't tracking sides anymore. Kayla gave birth to a girl 2 months later. I found out through Rachel. I haven't seen the baby. I don't intend to. Maybe that makes me cruel, maybe not. But I've stopped living in the house of maybe. I got a promotion. Turns out when you're not fighting off a family coup, you actually sleep better, work better, feel better. I turned the office into a gaming space, repainted, rearranged, not to forget, just to reclaim. Last week, my lawyer forwarded me a letter, 3 handwritten pages from Carol. She missed me. The family had changed. She wanted to move past this. There was no apology, no mention of what they tried to do, just paragraphs about her grief, her disappointment, her hurt. I read it once. Then I folded it up and dropped it in the trash. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge. I just needed it to be over. I haven't spoken to Kayla since the court date. Not when she gave birth. Not when Carol posted a blurry photo of the baby swaddled in pink with the caption, "The light at the end of everything." Not when Chase disappeared from the picture 3 weeks later, packed up his gear, and moved to LA like he'd always said he would. He'd had $23,000 saved. Separate account. Rachel found out through his mother, who was just as blindsided. Kayla had no idea. Turns out he'd never planned to stay. Not with her. Not with the baby. Now she lives back at home. 5 people in one house, Kayla, the baby, Carol, Frank, and the echoes of a plan that didn't work. Frank picked up extra shifts. Carol retired early to help with childcare. Rachel says the baby cries a lot, that Kayla's overwhelmed, that Carol is too tired to pretend it's fine. Sometimes I think about the baby. She didn't ask for any of this. She didn't lie. She didn't manipulate. She was just born into a storm. So I did one thing. I set up a trust, small but solid, just enough to give her a choice one day. She won't know about it until she turns 18. Kayla won't be able to access it. There's no note, no card. Oh, no strings. It's not for them. It's for her. For the girl born into a mess I didn't make but refused to clean up. I don't know if she'll understand. Maybe she'll resent me for not being around. Maybe she'll never even know my name. But if someday she opens a letter with her college acceptance or signs a lease she chose for herself, or simply looks around and realizes she's free, then that will be enough. That will be mine. I've never been one for birthdays. Growing up, they were more of a calendar reminder than a celebration, just another day when the house hummed with someone else's priorities. But turning 30 felt different. Not because I expected cake or gifts, but because I needed to know if anyone remembered. Even once. So I planned something small, a quiet corner at a local bar in South Austin. Nothing fancy, just a string of warm yellow lights. I brought myself a red velvet cake I ordered from a bakery I liked, and a few childhood photos I printed on glossy paper and taped to the brick wall behind the booth. I thought if they saw the photo of me at age 4 holding my baby sister Courtney, or the one from the summer road trip where Mom Eileen had written "Our brave girl" on the back, maybe they'd remember. I sent invites to each of them, Eileen, my mother, Dennis, my stepfather of 22 years, Courtney, my half-sister 5 years younger, always the favorite in every room, and Zach, my half-brother the baby, everyone still called Little Man, even in his 20s. I worded the message gently. Not a demand, just a, "would love to see you if you're free." I arrived early, sat at the table nearest the bar where the light was soft and low. The bartender, a man maybe in his 40s with kind eyes, asked if I was waiting for someone. I smiled and said yes, though I wasn't sure. By 7:15 p.m., no calls, no texts. I glanced at the door every time it swung open, trained to smile just in case. But the faces never matched. At 8:00, the cake still sat untouched, the thank you cards beside it still sealed. I took a sip of water, then another. The bartender came by and slid me a small glass of plum wine on the house. "Maybe they're running late," he said gently. I nodded. But at 9:00, I knew. I cut a single slice of cake, posted a photo to social media with a vague caption, something about how sweet nights taste better with cake. I smiled for the picture. Then I ate in silence slowly, not because I was hungry, but because I didn't want the cake to look forgotten. By 10:00, I gathered everything quietly, tipped the bartender well, walked out to the sound of my heels tapping on concrete. I drove home in silence, no music, just the buzz of street lamps and my own thoughts. At home, I slipped off my shoes and stood barefoot in the kitchen, not moving, not thinking, just breathing. I wasn't sad because they didn't come. I was sad because some part of me still believed they might. A week passed. I didn't bring up the birthday. Not in the group chat, not in private messages. I waited stupidly for a belated call, maybe even a late card in the mail with Eileen's handwriting on the envelope's sharp looping cursive that always smelled faintly of lavender hand cream. Instead, I got a group text. It was from Eileen. The same thread where we used to coordinate Christmas potlucks and 4th of July barbecues. "Hey family, Dennis's 60th is coming up. We're planning a weekend at Pacific Shores Resort full package, beachside private dining. $1, $500 per person. Please Venmo me by Friday so I can lock in the bookings. Love you all. No mention of my birthday. No. Sorry, we missed it. Not even a, how are you? Just an invoice dressed in emojis and affection. Courtney replied within minutes. Just sent it. Can't wait, it's going to be amazing. Zach followed done. Let me know if you want me to pick up a bottle for Dad. I reread the thread, my thumb resting against the screen like it might shake loose an explanation. Nothing. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was cold, still. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to yell. I opened my payment app and typed in Eileen's handle. I sent $1. The note field blinked, waiting. I typed, happy birthday. Nothing more. Then I closed the app, locked the door, and turned off the lights in my apartment as if I were leaving for a long trip. I wasn't. I was just done. I changed the passwords on every joint account I'd once shared with them, the emergency fund I set up for Eileen's prescriptions, the shared card I had for Courtney's tuition overflow, the bank profile Zach used when he maxed out his student loans. I hadn't touched those accounts in months, but they had. I knew they had. Then I scrolled through my contact list. One by one, Eileen, Dennis, Courtney, Zach. Block, 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 block. No explanations. No dramatic goodbye text. Just silence. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened a half-written message draft I'd started months ago. I don't know what I did to become invisible to you, but it hurts. I deleted it. I didn't need them to understand anymore. I didn't even need them to remember me. I just needed to remember myself apart from them. And for the first time in years, I slept without checking my phone once. It started with a notification. Suspicious login attempt detected on your account. I stared at it, the screen washing my apartment in pale blue light. My hands didn't shake, but my chest tightened like an invisible rope was pulling inward. I opened the banking app. They'd tried to access the joint account, the one I hadn't touched in months, the one I'd once used to cover Zach's tuition bills, Courtney's wedding florist, Dennis's truck repairs, and the bathroom remodel Eileen said would help his back. I called the bank, no hesitation. Freeze the account, I said. Transfer all remaining funds to my personal checking, and change every verification method tied to my name. The voice on the line didn't ask questions. They never do when the tone is that calm. That evening, the calls started, unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Then came the messages, short and sharp, full of anger wrapped in concern. Why'd you change the locks? What the hell are you doing? Why are you shutting us out? This is family. Pick up the phone. I turned it off. By Friday night, I thought maybe the noise would die down. But I'd underestimated Eileen. Silence to her wasn't defeat. It was a challenge. And she never walked away from a challenge. The knock came just after 9. Fast. Loud. Relentless. I checked the peephole, then the security camera feed. 2 police officers, one tall solid, the other younger, clipboard in hand. I opened the door, but not wide. Gloria Whitman, the older one, asked. I nodded. We received a report that you're unreachable and may be at risk. Your family filed a missing person report, said you've been acting unstable. Possibly a danger to yourself? I blinked. Unstable. I let them in just far enough to see my living room, clean, quiet, the soft hum of a diffuser still misting lavender into the air. My work laptop was open on the table, Zoom call log still active. I've been working all week, I said. You can call my manager. 10 people on my team can confirm I've been in meetings all day. I'm not missing. I'm not unstable. I'm just done. The younger officer scanned the room, then met my eyes. Family said they were worried, he said, his tone measured. I smiled, dry, not cruel. They weren't worried. They were losing control. The older officer tucked his notebook away. We don't get involved in family matters. But if the contact continues and you feel harassed, you can file a restraining order. I nodded once. When they left, I didn't sit down right away. I just stood in the doorway, hand on the knob. My apartment was still warm, still mine. I never imagined the day my own family would weaponize concern like that. Not to find me, but to pull me back. Saturday came quietly. I was in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil when the pounding began. It wasn't a knock. It was fists, unapologetic, angry. I walked slowly to the door and checked the camera. Eileen, Dennis, Courtney, Zach, all four of them on my front step like some twisted portrait of unity. Eileen's mouth was a tight white line. Dennis stood with his arms crossed rigid. Courtney tapped furiously on her phone, likely recording. Zach looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, but he was still there. I didn't open the door right away. I turned on the speaker. "What are you doing here?" Eileen's voice cracked like a whip. "Open the door, Gloria. Now. We need to talk." "That's enough," I said evenly. "Talk about what? How you tried to access my account, or how I was left out of Dennis's birthday plans but still got an invoice." Dennis stepped forward, his voice deep rehearsed. "You're acting like a child. We're worried. And this is how you respond." I let out a short, dry laugh. "Worried? You called the police and reported me missing." "That's your version of concern." Courtney hit the door harder. "Who do you think you are, ignoring our calls, freezing accounts, blocking your own mother? You're being dramatic again." I opened the door. I didn't let them in. I stood in the frame, shoulder against the wood body, still gaze steady. "What do you want?" I asked. I didn't soften the edge in my voice. Eileen met my eyes I'd inherited. Hers were rimmed red, but not from sadness. From rage. "We're family, and you're treating me like some stranger." Maybe I said calmly, "You never really knew me at all." Dennis's tone sharpened. "You're being ungrateful. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you everything." I stepped forward, voice low. "I started working when I was 16. I paid for my own car, my own tuition. I graduated with no loans because I took on 2 jobs. I gave Courtney her wedding, Zach his diploma, and you your second mortgage. What exactly did you give me besides obligation and silence?" Eileen exploded. "What about the nights I stayed up worrying about you? The credit cards I maxed every Christmas to make it feel like a home? And now you throw it all away over a birthday." "Not over a birthday," I said sharper now. "Over a decade of endurance. Every time I had a little extra, you had a new emergency. Every time I said I was tired, you said, 'We're all tired.' Every time I asked for space, you called it abandonment." Courtney sneered. "You always play the martyr. You've got money now, and you act like we're parasites." I nodded slowly. Not the only one who struggled, but the only one who got exploited, and still called it love. Dennis tried one last time tone, lowering like a peace offering. "We just want things to go back to normal. Families fight. This is just a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "It's not a misunderstanding. It's a pattern. A one-sided economy of love. And I'm bankrupt." Eileen stepped forward. "Fine. Walk away. But don't come crawling back when you're alone and out of options." I didn't flinch. If I have to choose between being alone or being used, I choose alone. She opened her mouth again, but Dennis pulled her back. Courtney gave me a look like I'd just set fire to our entire childhood. Maybe I had. I shut the door, quietly, fully, for good. 2 days after I closed the door in their faces, I got an email, not from them, from the bank. Co-borrower consent required for mortgage refinancing on property located at 11 and 75 Shoreline Drive. I stared at the screen, then reread it. 1175 Shoreline. Their house. The one Eileen and Dennis had begged me to co-sign for 6 years ago when another loan had fallen through. I still remembered the late-night call, Eileen sobbing Dennis in the background, mumbling something about being too old to start over. Back then, I had told myself, "You're in a good place. You can help. It's family." But now, they were trying to refinance it again without even asking. I didn't feel shocked, just hollowed out. I called my attorney, Elaine Foster, the same woman who helped me navigate a financial mess when I briefly worked in real estate. "They're trying to refinance without my consent," I told her. "I want it blocked." Her voice was calm but clipped. "Send me the original agreement title deed and any emails. I'll freeze all transactional rights tied to your name immediately." I didn't stop there. I opened a new draft in my inbox and typed subject request for personal financial audit family support expenses past 7 years. I sent it to my accountant with a list I'd kept in the Notes app on my phone. Quiet entries over the years jotted down more out of survival than resentment. Shoreline down payment, $78,000, Dennis's Ford truck loan, $21,000, Courtney's destination wedding, $36,000, Zach's college tuition, 4 years, $44,000, Eileen's medical bills, 2020, 2022, $51,000, miscellaneous loans never returned, $18,500, total $248,500. I asked for itemized proof receipts, bank transfers, anything that could speak louder than memory. 3 days later, the audit was complete. It came in a clean spreadsheet with color-coded tabs and PDFs attached for each item. I opened it slowly, like peeling the dressing off a wound I wasn't ready to see. I stared at the number again. Not because I wanted it back, but because I needed to see it for what it was not: generosity. Not love. Just the cost of being in a family where only one person ever paid. I reopened the family group chat, long dormant now, and dropped the file. No greeting, no context. Just 5 words: I want it all back. The thread exploded within the hour. Eileen, have you lost your mind? Who does this to their own family? Courtney, are you serious? You're counting every penny, like we're strangers. Zach, I'm working double shifts to survive, and now you want blood money? Dennis, finally. You're tearing this family apart. Your mother hasn't slept in days. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I emailed Elaine again. If they can't buy out my share of the house I wrote, I want to withdraw. Force a sale. 10 minutes later, she called. Are you sure? Yes. They might turn on you completely. They already did. Elaine's office sent the formal notice on a Monday morning. To Eileen Whitman and Dennis Harper, re-withdrawal of capital interest in jointly owned property at 1175 Shoreline Drive. It was short, direct. If they couldn't buy out my share, we'd proceed with a forced sale. Their reaction came faster than I expected. First, a message from Courtney. You're really going to put Mom back in that rundown apartment from before. You're not just cold Gloria, you're cruel. I didn't reply. They called me selfish. Me, the daughter who'd sent money monthly without being asked, who'd paid for everything from Zach's textbooks to Dennis's dental implants. Now, because I wanted my name off a house I never lived in, I was the villain. That night, the only message that gave me pause came from Eileen. Gloria, if you go through with this, we lose everything. The house will be sold. I have nowhere to go. Are you really this heartless? I set the phone down gently. I wasn't heartless. I was clear. For the first time in years, I knew if I didn't follow this through, I'd fall right back into the old role provider, peacekeeper, sacrificial limb. Then came the silence. A week without a word from any of them. Not even Courtney, who never let a moment of drama pass unposted. But the quiet didn't feel like surrender. It felt like strategy. Elaine sent me an update the following Monday. They'd agreed to sell. It's being listed as a fast sale property, she said. But don't get too comfortable, they're already delaying payout of your share. I answered with 2 words. Stay close. 3 days later, I got a call from Aunt Virginia, Eileen's older sister, the only relative who still spoke to me with a tone of measured care. Your mother called, she said slowly. She's crying every night. Says you're throwing the whole family out on the street. I didn't defend myself. I wasn't angry with Virginia, but I was tired. People believe the version of the story they want, I told her. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for a refund. The house went on the market 2 weeks later, a 3-bedroom with a deck out back where we once grilled burgers on the 4th of July. I saw the listing photos. I felt nothing. Then the cars went first Dennis's Explorer, then Eileen's sedan. Sold through Facebook Marketplace masked as downsizing. Then the jewelry. The sapphire earrings I'd given Eileen when I got promoted, the ones she wore every Christmas. A broker sent photos to Elaine as proof of payment attempts. I barely recognized them anymore. The payments trickled in. First $10,000. A week later, $5,000 more. I didn't acknowledge receipt. Elaine sent a formal letter, pay the balance or face full legal proceedings. The next morning, the final $7,200 arrived. Total $22,200. Exactly what I'd asked for. Not $1 more. I stared at the bank notification. Just text on a screen. But somehow it felt like 10 years of giving had been collapsed into a single line item. Transfer received, no apology, no explanation, no family. Just money finally moving in the right direction. It was a Friday night 4 months later when a coworker asked if I wanted to join them for bowling after work. I almost said no. Loud places never felt like home. But something in me, curious or maybe just restless, said yes. We took the lane near the end. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting everything in soft greens and blues. Laughter echoed off the polished floor. I rolled a few frames, nothing impressive but decent enough to avoid attention. Then, as I turned to grab another ball, I saw him. 2 lanes over, struggling to lift a dark green ball. Shoulders thinner, hair grayer, gait slower. Dennis. He didn't see me at first, but when he bent to pick up a spare, his eyes swept the room and stopped. We both froze. Instinct told me to leave, to vanish into the noise. But I stayed. He walked toward me slowly. His bowling shoes squeaked on the waxed floor. When he got close enough, he didn't speak right away. Just looked at me like he was waiting for permission to exist. "Gloria," he said finally. Soft. As if one wrong breath might break whatever this was. I didn't reply. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, gesturing toward the empty lane beside me. "Mind if I roll a few?" I didn't nod, but I waved to the attendant to reset the lane. We bowled in silence for a few minutes. His first throw went straight into the gutter. He gave a short, defeated laugh. "Guess I lost the last thing I was ever better at than you." I said nothing. He sat back down beside me. Not too close. His voice dropped. "I used to think I was strong. That being the man of the house meant something. But the truth is, when you started earning more, started growing beyond what I could offer, I felt small. I didn't know how to handle that." I looked at him not with anger, just observation. "I used the title stepfather like a shield," he continued, "to make you feel like you owed me something. But the truth is, you didn't. You never did." I rested my elbows on my knees, eyes steady. "You didn't just take money, Dennis. You took trust. You dragged them all into a cycle of need no one was willing to call what it was." He nodded slowly. "No apologies ever going to fix it. I just want you to know. I regret it. Deeply. And I'm sorry I never told you I was proud of you. That landed heavier than I expected. But I didn't soften. I'm not coming back," I said. "I'm not looking to fix anything. I just want to live without being expected to give." He reached out a hand. It trembled slightly. I took it. His was cold. Mine wasn't warm. But for the first time, it felt equal. I stood, straightened my jacket. "I'm heading out. Enjoy your game." He nodded. Didn't ask me to stay. The night air wrapped around me as I stepped outside the alley. It smelled faintly of pavement and cold, with a hint of magnolia from somewhere I couldn't place. I opened the car door and sat for a moment, not rushing. Just breathing. No missed calls. No guilt-laced messages. No one asking for rent money or rescue. Just silence. At home, I made tea and sat by the window legs curled under me. I didn't think about birthdays or bank transfers or the word daughter as they had used it. I just listened to the stillness of a life no longer borrowed, no longer bartered. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel punished. I felt mine. The next morning, I booked a trip. Not to disappear, just to begin again. Not as a wallet, not as a fallback plan, just as Gloria.